Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast. This is episode 86. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
I'm David.
Hi guys.
Hiya.
I'm feeling a wee bit under the weather, I'll be honest.
I don't know
if you can hear it in my voice, but I think there's just been I've been fighting off a cold kind of, I don't know what the hell it is actually, but it's just never really fully developed into anything, but it's just made me feel bunged up. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. But
there's definitely a bit of nasaliness.
there is, but also we had some unnatural heat here in Scotland, and I didn't agree with it when I was out working. So I'm feeling a bit sort of sweaty and confused. I'll be honest.
I think we're all feeling it. It's muggy.
Muggy. That's the Scottish word, isn't it?
Aye.
Is that a Scottish word? Or is it?
I don't know.
The people in the north of England use that.
I think
Say it's close in Scotland.
Aye,
Say it's close.
it's
That's
close.
the Scottish one, isn't it? Yeah. I always used to really confuse me when I was younger, and old people said it was close, and I'm like, what's close? What are you talking about?
Death is close
Well,
at all times.
you always steer the conversation towards death, Euan.
I can't help it.
Right, we've got a weird board games episode for you this week.
It's odds and ends.
It's been that time of year, as I said in the recent tweet that we put out, where like we've been finding it kind of, we've been busy, and you know we've got the summer's here, or it's turning up, and people are going places, and it's been kind of difficult for us to get together and actually play anything. But when we did get together and play stuff, we've made some weird decisions about what we've been playing. So we're going to talk about a couple of things that you would never expect people like us to play. So let's just get straight into this. The first one is the third edition of a GMT game called Successors. The Battles for Alexander's Empire, I believe is the subtitle. And this, but being a GMT game, you know, when GMT have made like Twilight Struggle, and they made one of my favourite sort of game series, the Commands and Colours series, they published that. But being a GMT game, it is very much like it has an old school sort of counter and dice rolling sort of feel to it. But it's a very similar game to Twilight Struggle in the way that it's actually played, in the way that it's card driven. Now, Dave, you've been sitting rereading the rules for us, because it's been a couple of weeks since we played this, so you're now our resident Successors expert, so go on then. Tell us what this game is.
Well, it takes place after the death of Alexander the Great, and you play as various generals who are vying for power in order to, I guess, become not the successor themselves, but to be in control, I would say, of whoever succeeds Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you are playing a kind of faction, because you get you're assigned generals at the start of the game, kind of randomly, and you use them to kind of basically control your armies and things like that. I think you can kind of split armies off as well, but generally
Yeah. I mean,
get them around with.
it's the idea is Alexander has just died, and it's disarray now. No one is in control, so his empire is fractured.
Yeah.
And there's all these people spread across the board, which is a map of, I guess, the empire at the time of his death. And it's a nice map. I love it. I do love a game with a map, and this is a good one, I would say.
I think one of the things I like about this map is that it's not like busy in terms of like the artwork or anything like that.
Like some other games I talked about recently.
Well, yes, but I think
I would totally agree. It's the opposite of that.
It's almost like too far in the other direction. You know,
Well, maybe, but
that's the GMT thing is generally quite
says
stripped back.
It is a very GMT thing, yeah. It is stripped back, and they've focused more on the nodes and the points in the game, the places you can travel between and all that. But the map itself is it's kind of basic, but at the same time, it works really well.
And it's good though, because it's got all the old names of various regions and cities. You know, all these places. Some will have heard of, but there's others that I was not being an aficionado of classical history. There's all these places that I've never heard of at all, and it's great. I really like this map.
Yeah, when you're given your generals and you're trying to work out, it says so and so is the satrap of Phrygia, and you're going, well, I mean, I know this is a map of the world. Now, where's Phrygia? What's its flag look like?
There's a lot of that goes on in this game. There's definitely like cards that say put something in this place, and you're like, well, where the hell is that?
Yeah, but you can find it though because it's written on the freaking board. Unlike other games.
Are you going to spend a lot of this review getting big?
Never going to drop this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you do is you get your 2 generals are assigned to you. We played with 3 players, but I believe it plays 4. Mm-hmm. Is it always 2 that each person gets? I'm not entirely sure.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. So you get a couple in there distributed randomly.
Yes, that's
they're
right.
not in pairs. So each general, and they all have great names, like I was Antipater, or Antipater, I imagine it's pronounced, and Perdiccas. And each general has a starting army, some troops that are assigned to him, and he will be starting in a particular location on the board. And generally, I think always you have control of that location as well, because part of this game is placing little control markers on the map to indicate cities that you have influence over. So yeah, you'll like I think it was Perdiccas started in Macedonia, so I had control of all of that and control of the capital, which was Pelas. Yeah, and that's basically the setup, isn't it? There's not a great deal more to it. There's a few other little bits and pieces, I think, but it's pretty straightforward as
in terms of the
games
setup,
go.
yeah, the setup was actually very straightforward.
Yeah.
Unlike the rulebook.
Yeah, well, it should be said, this is it's not an ancient game, but it's from 2008, I believe, although Chris does have a later edition, which, from what I gather, does have some quite significant changes to the game, streamlining and making it a bit smoother to play, I think. So it's not old, but it does have some of the trappings of older war games in the way that the rulebook is written, perhaps, and in just the number of exceptions and little bits, and there's little niggly bits and pieces in there, which they tend to add into these games to give them a bit more historical flavour, I think.
I think that's definitely quite evident with this one, that, you know, there's lots of little additional rules, things that we never really encountered in the game. There were certain things like to do with like the fleets and stuff that I think we almost like actively avoided because we couldn't be bothered dealing with them.
Yeah, although yes, there definitely was, like, we didn't use the interception rules, for example, but I would say that didn't really I don't think that affected our enjoyment of the game in any way.
But I think this, like, I mean, obviously talking about like other GMT games, we played, like, me and Chris played Twilight Struggle, and that feels a lot more, yes, it's like historically based, but in terms of like the gameplay, it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of like little, you know, the cards affect what they affect, and then you don't have to worry about it too much. And to some extent, that's the same with Commands and Colours. It's, you know, it's a war game, and you play it as it's played. This is trying to get you kind of immersed in this period in history, so it has like lots of little.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know how people describe these games, because to me it's a fusion of an old style war game with the kind of more modern, I mean, the card driven trappings that come from Twilight Imperium. I mean, I'm going to call it Twilight Imperium over and over, just get used to that. Twilight Struggle. So yeah, Twilight Struggle does have the board, and but it's very pared down what goes on in the board, and it's just about influence, and there's a few rules with rolling dice. Whereas this, there's a lot more to this. There's more dice rolling, there's more looking up on tables. But having said that, it's still quite simple.
Yes.
Compared to, I've recently bought a game from 1982, which is a type of war game, and it's the most difficult thing I've ever had to wade through, ever. And it's partly because it's just full of exceptions, but it's also because rulebooks were not as good. And the rulebook for this game, yeah, you have to get through it, but it's not that bad.
Did you buy one of those games where you have to like keep track of all various different things and single infantry units and stuff like that?
It's not even that. It's just written really badly, the rulebook, and it's full of like things that contradict each other or are ambiguous and that sort of thing. Like things have definitely come along, and this rulebook is, like I say, it's dense, but we could understand it all. So the way the actual game works, you've got yourself set up, and we'll simplify it a bit. There's two really key sections to the way you play this game, I would say. And the first one is what they call the Taiki phase, but that's the card-driven part of the game.
I think Taiki was a goddess or something.
I believe so. We looked this up. I can't remember goddess of what. I'm not sure, but probably good fortune.
Chips. Goddess of kebabs, actually, it could be. I'll look it up.
So you have a hand of cards at the start of the game and at the start of the round, because it's played in a series of rounds, and they are similar to the cards in Twilight Struggle in the sense that they have two purposes, two things you can use a card for. It has its number on it, which is the command points, and it has an event on it, which
I am now displaying to the boys.
Yeah. We'll put something up on the podcast so you can see that when it's on.
We'll put up an image.
We'll put something directly into
an audio image.
Yeah, there's for the event. There's some text and a name for what it is, and it basically describes what you do. So during the Taiki phase, you play one of your cards, and you choose to either use it for the command points or you can play it as an event. If it's an event, you basically follow what it says, and they can be things that are as simple as gain some mercenary troops, gain some elephants. There's a card called Elephants, which just gives you some elephants. That's always cool. Who doesn't like elephants?
Or the even better elephant card, the Indian Elephant Corps.
Nice.
See, that's the elephant card you want.
Yeah, because there are some others which have more of a historical flavour, and I think are tied into kind of events or the types of things that would have happened in that period.
You mean this one, which, for example, says 23,000 Greek soldiers abandoned their eastern colony?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Well, that's where you start getting into the more Twilight Struggle-y kind of stuff, where it's you're kind of playing the events sort of effect, like, you know, you can kind of take away units from different places, or you can kind of affect yourself in that way. You can also there are certain ones as well where you can play both, where you have but it lets you play the event and you get the command points.
There's also surprise cards, which you just shout "surprise" and you can play them at any time.
And you are required to shout.
They're just sort of like dick moves, generally, I would think. It's probably worth saying for people who are familiar with Twilight Struggle, there is a bit of a difference in these cards, in that the ones in Twilight Struggle, every card is unique, if I remember correctly, and they're all tied into historical events. This game, there are historical cards, but they're less so. They're less about discrete things that happen. Some of them are kind of general ideas, and there are a few that are very specific things that took place. There are some that you can only play under certain conditions. But there are a lot of others which, like I said, are things like where you just get some troops, or there's the unrest cards where independent troops appear in cities, sort of like a revolt or something like that. So it has a different feel, I would say. But I mean, it's okay. I mean, you can make arguments for both. I do prefer the Twilight Struggle-y thing. But
I think that makes it. I think all the sort of historical accuracy in the individual cards makes it a bit more interesting, because this does feel very much like a war game, and they've just kind of gone like, here's some vague reference to something so that you can have an extra 2 units.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're charting the course of history quite so much, but.
I mean, I stuck Alexander's body in the ground in Turkey.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Well, yeah. We'll get to that. But so you can play it for the bet, and the other thing you can do is play it for the command points. And you can use the command points to move your units about. You can use them to just raise some more units for your armies. And probably the most important thing you can use it for is for placing influence markers around where one of your generals is located on the map. And that's, I would say, the best thing you can use it for, because it's certainly at the beginning of the game. So that's the Taiki phase, if I recall correctly.
Okay, and Taiki is of course, it's the Greek goddess of fortune.
Yeah, I had a feeling it might be.
Which is why it's just random card draws, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it?
It's all about the fortune.
So you spend ages, if you're me, deciding which card to play and resolving all that, and then you're like, oh wait, I've got another bit to do as well after this, because after you've done that, you've got the movement phase, or well, is it called? It's called the strategy phase. Oh no, sorry, it's called the movement segment.
So go ahead, you got to be careful about these things.
Yeah,
Is it a segment or is it a phase?
It's a segment.
No.
And basically, this allows you to move your generals with their attending armies about the map. They can move a certain distance. Oddly, you roll a die for this, and depending on the initiative, that's the word, initiative rating of your general, it will determine how far you get to move. Basically, generals with better initiative tend to move more quickly.
Yeah.
And generals with less initiative move more slowly. But usually that's traded off by the...
Now you should say that's not, like, it's not an order. It's how many spaces they get to move.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a high initiative lets you move faster than other generals in terms of like you go before them. It's actually how much spaces you get to move. So actually, like for example, I had two initiatives with really low, two generals with really low initiative from the start of the game, and I think every turn I only moved them 2 spaces.
Yeah. It's a more general kind of speed, mobility, I suppose it represents across the game as a whole. And you can also during the movement phase raise some troops as well, but generally you're going to be using that bit to move about. Although it can be, I found when we were playing it, sometimes I didn't really know where to move to, but I think this is just maybe lack of experience with the game.
Probably.
Lack of me not really have... Well, I didn't really have any strategy, so probably that's what happened there. And basically you repeat those until you've played all your cards, and then that's considered a round, and there are a set number of rounds for the game. Although I can't remember how many it was. It was like between 6 and 8, I think. Something like that, because the game can end early.
I think it was less than that, actually. I think maybe it was 5.
Before, yeah. So,
but you do get a lot done in a round.
Yes, yeah. Basically, when the round ends, you get another bunch of cards and some reinforcements and a few other sort of housekeeping things. But that's the sort of mechanics of how you get around. So what are you trying to do in the game? There are a few ways to win in this, and they're based around 2 types of points. You can have legitimacy points and victory points in this game, and they're 2 different kind of things. Maybe mention victory points first, because they're probably the simpler of the 2, and you gain them for things like controlling provinces is definitely the big one.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there are a bunch of other smaller things in the game, I recall, that give you victory points rather than legitimacy points. Controlling certain characters, I think some of them just gave you victory points if you had control for them. I can't remember what else there was. There were definitely some other things. I don't know if anyone can remember any. There's like little achievements almost. I don't know what you'd call them. Because some of them were down in the bottom left of the board. Certain things you could do.
Yes.
And they would gain you victory points.
There was stuff like having like the biggest fleet, for example, like the biggest navy.
Yes.
And
you would claim a little chip for that, and that would give you like 3 victory points.
That's right, aye. And there wasn't there something to do with like marrying people? Did that not give you points, or
yes,
that give you stuff?
Yeah,
because there is a weird thing about there are sort of NPCs cutting about the board, almost like Alexander's children, like
various heirs and other people as well,
and you could just go and either kidnap them or whatever, just like take them with you.
Yeah, and you might there were people you could marry, but you needed to have the cards in order to marry them. So yeah, those gave you victory points, and also Alexander's body.
Yes,
I believe that's victory points rather than legitimacy points, if I recall correctly. One of the quite interesting things in this game. I might be wrong about that. I'll probably be wrong about a lot of things in this
From what I remember, the legitimacy points were the heirs, these characters that
Yes.
are there, they gave you legitimacy points. So controlling them or interacting them with them in certain ways gave you legitimacy
Yes.
points. The idea being that that would put you in a position to be the successor.
Yes.
Way!
The idea with legitimacy is you're trying to gain enough. Well,
Yeah, that's right. It's legitimacy points, Euan, you're correct.
for Alexander.
For the heirs and the
Yes.
marriages and stuff.
Right.
And also, yeah, I mean, these are the more sort of honourable things, if you like, and they're really less military in a sense, and they're more about gaining influence and respect. Some of them, some characters just start off with more legitimacy. Like my two generals, I assume were two more senior characters, so each of them gave me a legitimacy point right off the bat. Having control of Macedonia gives you 3 legitimacy points, but that you can lose. And it's very easy to lose legitimacy points. So having control of the heirs, if while they're under your influence, you get points for that. Those sorts of things. But yeah, Alexander's body, as I mentioned before, that if I think is victory points. And this is quite an interesting thing. In the second round of the game, you gain Alexander's body is placed on the board in its little cart in Babylon, if I recall correctly, which is presumably reasonably close to where he fell in real life. You can take control of that and move it around the board with you. And the reason you might want to do that is because once you have control of it, one of the things you can do is bury Alexander. And depending on where you choose to bury him, you get a certain amount of points for that as well.
It's actual legitimacy points for Alexander's body as well.
Is it?
For burying him as
For
well.
burying him
Yes.
and having possession of him. Okay, right.
And the difference is that if you manage to get him back to Greece, or Macedonia, sorry, if you get him back to there
Hellas.
and bury him in Pella,
Pella.
you get like 5 times as many as you would if you buried him anywhere else. But
Yeah.
I just got bored of carrying him around and stuck him in the ground in, I think, was it Turkey or was it Crete or somewhere like
well,
that?
what happened when we played? I started off in control of Babylon. I chose to ignore the fact that Alexander's body was there and just go rampaging across the map. And just kind of, because when we started the game, we weren't quite clear on whether we could move him or not. Yeah. We hadn't quite got that far, so I was like, whatever, I'll come back for him. It'll be fine. Well, it wasn't fine because Chris came and stole him and set off on the journey. But this was a bit later in the game, and to get him all the way from Babylon to Pella is
It's a task.
a task.
Because you've only got 3 rounds to do it as well.
Yes.
Because if you don't do it by the end of round 4, he's gone.
Yeah,
And the body disappears from the map.
So that's quite a distance on the map in terms of the number of spaces that you have to move, and people aren't going to make it easier for you. Ironically, I was really well set up to do this.
Yep.
But I didn't really realise this until it was a bit too late, because I had control of Pella and Babylon. So I'm a bit sad that I didn't just make it my mission to do that one thing, because I may have been able to pull it off. But as it was, Chris ran in, stole the body, took him a bit across the map, had a bit of a fight with me, and then just decided to bury him in Halicarnassus, I believe, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, possibly in the
It
mausoleum.
was somewhere around there.
I think it was because of the famous mausoleum in Halicarnassus, I remember.
Did that make you feel good?
Did you know that's it's the mausoleum? I had to look this up. Is where King Mausolus is buried,
Is that why it's called that?
and
is
that's apparently this is where we get the word mausoleum from,
it? Facts with Dave.
according to Wikipedia. Who knows?
Well, if you've learnt nothing else this week, listeners, please take that away with you.
So you're vying for these 2 resources. Victory points, generally, once you've got them, you tend to hold on to them.
Yeah.
Generally, they're not hard and fast, but they're harder to lose. Legitimacy points.
Sorry, just to jump in there. The 3 things that you do get the points for that I think are the variable ones.
Uh-huh.
Or well, the provinces. In fact, everything's variable.
Yeah,
actually, the
'cause you
victory points.
can
But the
you
provinces,
can lose a
you can hang
province.
on, lose on. You can lose those. But it's the largest fleet. It's controlling the Hellas Point.
Oh
That
yeah.
was another one, which I think, Dave, you were trying to do, weren't you?
I think the game ended before I had all of it. That was
And
close.
also becoming King of Asia.
Oh yes, yeah, that's a tricky one. There's like 3 different
3 provinces
Quite
that
large
aren't
provinces,
adjacent to each other, are they?
That's a tough one.
And that's a tough one to get. But I
the-
think it's worth a lot of points.
The legitimacy points are certainly more fluid.
Yes.
In that I started with a ton of them, and by the end of the game had like the least amount by a significant margin, which had quite a significance for the way I played the way the game turned out for me, because the start of the game, the person who has the most legitimacy is labelled the usurper, and other people are able to attack him without losing any legitimacy of your own. Everyone starts with this sort of champion status. It's 3 legitimacy points. If you attack another champion other than the usurper, you lose your legitimacy points. I think one of the first things I did in the game was just attack someone else and immediately lost those 3
I think
legitimacy
you attacked
points.
Euan, actually.
Yeah. This is a great game, by the way. I really enjoyed it.
They were a lot of fun just playing with this.
Yeah. Really went for it.
So, the way you win, before we forget about this, you have to get a certain number of legitimacy points.
18.
Yeah, and I think that's an immediate win, isn't it?
It's immediately, you win by becoming the successor.
Yeah, and 18 is a lot though, but doable. You had a lot at the end of the game.
A lot in the end, yeah. I had a lot of everything by
A set number of victory points as well, but that's quite a high number.
Yeah, it's 29, I think.
Yes.
But I think it's less if you're playing, or possibly more. I can't remember. If you're playing with less players, it's different. But
there are other ways to end the game. I think, is it a combined... You can end the game early if you have a combined amount of legitimacy points and victory points that's greater than the other players. But then you need certain conditions for that. Like you have to control. Like in one of the first round, you had to control Heracles, which Chris did until I took him off him and prevented him from ending the game early, which everyone was really pleased about. But then Hercules dies after that round. So then you have to have control of a different heir, I think. And so on. And then I guess if you get to the end, then it's whoever has the most victory points, I assume.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And then there are various tiebreakers, including like just if you control Macedonia, then you win the tiebreaker. Stuff like that. I'm just sitting looking at this page right now. I'm not reciting this from memory.
Yeah. So that's how it works. You play your Taiki card, raise your troops, do your stuff, do your events. You move about, and then combat if you move on to the same space as another army. And the combat is somewhat old school in the sense that you're adding up the value, like numbers that are on your troops, on your various your mercenaries, your hoplites or whatever they're called, and your elephants, of course, which are unpredictable. You have to roll a die for them, and then you compare it with your opponent and look it up. You look up your dice roll on the table, and that determines the result, who's the winner, whether you lose troops or not, and so on. And I mean, you're not. If you lose the battle, it's not the end of the world in the sense that you're not completely wiped out. But you do lose some troops always, I think, and you have to go into the sin bin or whatever it's called.
Yeah, you basically
run away.
The dispersal box.
Yes,
I believe.
the box of shame.
Yes,
At the bottom of the board where you have to place your. You
My general spent a great deal of time.
You had the unfortunate pleasure.
Unfrequently, both at the same time.
This was the best bit of the game. See, I don't know what to do in these games often. Particularly, it's the first time we're playing it. I'm a bit unclear in the rules, and like there's a fair bit to take in initially in this game. So if I don't really know what to do, usually what I do is just go and attack one of the other players if that's a thing you can do in that game. I think I've done that in just about every game
Yeah, you do tend to do that, Dave.
allows
I'm always
you to-
very wary of you when we start playing these kind of games.
I'm always curious to see what happens. This is almost, in fact, I would say this is never a good idea. It's particularly a bad idea in this game, or in my particular situation.
Well, we weren't. I don't think we were aware from the beginning of the game how kind of orientated it was around these little goals.
Yeah,
Rather than it being a big, expansive war game, it is kind of. I think the victory point thing's more set up for what you were trying to do. Where it's like, you were right, I'm not bothered about losing my champion status, I'm just going to go for victory points and I'm going to big military victories.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is that you weren't really set up for doing that was the problem, because you had Alexander's body.
There were several...
and you had a clear route to Pella.
There were several reasons why this was a bad idea for me, and pretty much the opposite of what I should have done. One of which I didn't realise or didn't know at the start, is that I had a number of royal guard troops in my armies who they're kind of like loyal to the idea of the empire that was, and generally they're going to be loyal to whoever is the most legitimate person, which was me at the start of the game, but because I was like burning my legitimacy like it was like nothing.
They saw you as a heretic by the end.
What happens is they will not fight against another army that has more legitimacy.
Oh no,
than
it's
you.
worse than that.
Oh
it's,
yeah,
it's not that
they'll
they won't
defect.
fight, they'll defect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Oh yeah, you lose them altogether. And I had most of them. I think Chris had a few.
I had a few, yeah. There's a limited number in the game.
And so I had the bulk of them. So, I should have been preserving my legitimacy, because what it meant towards the latter part of the game was I had a huge army, and I was like, I can't use this against Chris.
Because most of your army will defect.
Yeah, so I was just like, I don't know what can I do? I didn't know what to do with this army. It was kind of stuck down near Babylon. I was like so indecisive, running backwards and forwards, and
that's one of those weird rules, though. I mean, I understand like the historical accuracy and stuff that probably would have been the case, but like at the same time, and as a rule for a game, I don't know if I like it or if I hate it.
Well,
it's kind of strange.
I like it. Gives this game some nice tactical depth and replayability because you get the different generals each time.
Yeah.
So like, that pairing I had was particularly interesting. It would have if I'd known what I was doing, would have driven the way I played that game in a very particular way. I definitely wouldn't have attacked anybody, and rather I would have done the opposite in the case that I would know that Chris would have been reluctant to attack me because of his troops defecting to my side and so on. So yeah, I kind of liked that about it. Yeah, because what happened? I attacked you, and it was highly amusing. Just because he was next to me, kind of came towards where I was, and I was like, I don't like this. Yeah. And also, I should state that before we started the game, because I was the usurper, both Chris and Euan made it very clear that they were going to attack me. So part of my motivation was like, well, I'm just going to attack them first.
I think I was besieging a local fortress or something like that.
Yeah, you were.
I was minding my own.
Nobody made any attempt.
I had no intention of fighting you.
No, I know, because
I always play these games really carefully, like cautiously. I'm always a bit like, I'm not going to attack anybody right now at the beginning of the game.
Well, you were doing the expand, which you probably should do at the start.
Well, the thing is, I think right now, I mean, we're going to have to like wrap up talking about this because that's been half an hour now. But like, the thing is that what I found was that I didn't really know what my strategy was going to be. I was using my cards as a kind of strategy. I was just looking at here's the cards I've got, and one of the cards I had was like I had to get to a certain city or something like that so I could raid it, because that's one of the things you can do. You can loot the cities,
treasure cities.
Treasure cities, yeah, like so these historically wealthy cities
to the southeast of me, Babylon.
So I just went straight for that, and I was just like I'm not going to fight you, Dave. But then Dave decided to fight me instead, and just like fight me off in a crappy little army that I had.
The best part was when I defeated one of Euan's armies. I mean, it's just the dice rolls. He attacked me in revenge and lost. So he had no generals on the board at this point. Euan then declared that he was going to attack me and only me for the remainder of the game.
Well, I had to have a tactic.
regardless of what happened.
So I spent the rest of the time trying to get into Macedonia.
just knocking on the door for the
Oh
whole time.
yeah. Like with mind you, also with Cleopatra in tow. That was the only thing I achieved
that's
during
right,
the game was I married Cleopatra, and
Not that Cleopatra, it was one of the old Cleopatras.
Oh right, well,
But,
still I married her.
but I think like when we play these kind of games, like you always find yourself in a situation like that where you're just, I'm just going to harass people now because I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah. I kind of lost the thread of the game. I was like, well, yeah, what else am I going to do other than be a thorn in Dave's side?
I had a lot of fun with it. I would definitely play this again.
Yeah, I think now we know a bit more about it.
Yeah,
That's actually that's slightly surprising for me to hear because I wasn't really sure what you thought about it. I don't know, maybe you have had some time since then to go away and think about this game. But at the time I was like, because I was kind of a bit like, do I like this game or do I not? Because it's been sitting there for years unplayed. Like I've never played it before. I picked it up on a whim. I can't even remember why I bought this. I think I was probably reading a lot about Greek history or something at the time. But yeah, I picked it up and it sat there for a long time. Now we've finally played it. Like I'm kind of, at first I was kind of on the fence, but like I feel like there is a solid game in there somewhere. I'm sure I said this after we finished. And I feel like there is a solid game in there somewhere, but because it's a GMT game, because it's an old school style war game, and the original came out in 1993 and it came with a magazine. I just looked that up.
Right, so it's even older.
It's quite old, aye. The second edition came out a few years later, and I think that's when they made it into a proper board game. But it seems, just from reading the brief description, that yes, there are. It's not the same game, essentially. There's a lot of changes being made. Yeah, because of all those things, there's all those little sort of exceptions in the rules that are just a wee bit annoying, and you have to kind of keep on top of it. And I think we didn't really play the game the way it was supposed to be played. Didn't play it properly because we just kind of got like, well, just ignore that stupid wee rule. We'll no bother. We're not going to go back and take our entire turn back for that wee thing. You know,
I don't know, it's kind of what, it's a frustrating thing, but it also is kind of what makes it interesting, the fact that I don't think I've played a game in a while where we've all gone so far off what the game wanted us to do. Yeah. And it kind of lets you do that as well.
One thing I will say, I was slagging off the rulebook. It is one of those old school rulebooks. It does have section 18.4 movement, section 18.5 capture. But nearly half of this rulebook actually is an example of play, where they've set up like an imaginary game, or maybe they did play this game, I don't know, with like a bunch of players, 4 players, and talking through what each player did each round and why they did it, and you know, like from their point of view with pictures of the board, and I think that's fascinating. I think that then it's actually, you could probably just read this example of play and pick up exactly how you play the game just for reading that.
Yeah, it's not the sort of preparation we do for playing board games.
It's not, but it's an interesting thing. I've seen examples of playing rulebooks. I've never seen one that in depth. That's really interesting. It's one of my favourite things about this rulebook. I probably would play this game again.
It's not, the rules aren't that bad.
They're not.
And also, there's tables in this. They're all on the board. There maybe one isn't, but the majority of them, they're right there on the board and they're easy to see. So it was no trouble at all looking stuff up in tables.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're giving this a thumbs up then.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
You don't need to get rid of it, Chris.
Right. Damn it! I was thinking the other day that I really need to get rid of some of these games.
Well, this was in your pile of stuff that you were going to try and get rid of.
It was, and I took it out again because I thought, no, I need to play it before I decide if I'm going to get rid of it. And now you're telling me to keep it, and
I think you should keep the GMT collection complete.
Yeah, why not? Okay, right, we definitely have to move on. So, Successor 3rd edition, it is not on sale anymore. It's not in print. At the moment. GMT do have a thing, I remember seeing this, I'm assuming they still do it, where they have a thing on their website where basically if enough people say that they'll buy a certain game, they will go and reprint it again.
It's 500, I believe.
Is it 5? Is it 5? Aye, is it a 500 club or something they call it?
Something
like that, aye. So, if this is a game that you're interested in playing, you can grab second-hand copies of it, but I think people are selling it for like, €100 a pop. So yeah, maybe wait to see if there's another reprint coming. But
get a posse together.
Yeah, get a posse together. Go to the GMT website and just hammer it.
Aye.
Right. No denial of service attacks, please. So yes, that is Successor's third edition. Like I say, the original came out in 1993, the first edition. The third edition is designed by Richard H. Berg, John B. Fierer, and Mark Simonich. So let's move on. We have played another game, which is... This is something that Euan gave me for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And we finally got into playing it a few weeks ago. This is a few weeks ago we played this now, isn't it? And we meant to talk about it in the last Board Games episode, but we ran out of time. So let's hear it for Sherlock Holmes the card game, which came out in 1991.
This is another old game.
Yeah, another old one.
Really.
But it's still... because they're still publishing this and selling, and I don't know who's publishing it, but they're selling it in shops, aren't they?
Yeah,
is this Gibson's or something that have made this?
Aye, Gibson's, who, they're like classic sort of toy material. I can't remember having any Gibson's games.
Fireside Football, I believe, was a Gibson's game.
Is that what, yeah.
I loved that. I think it's still in the cupboard. You should dig that out.
Yeah, let's do a Gibson's roundup.
So Euan, yes, you gave me this for Christmas. It's a card game where I don't know who you're supposed to be playing as. But it has all the characters from Sherlock Holmes in it, and you're supposed to be playing through some sort of mystery. Go on then, tell us about it.
It is essentially quite an abstracted card game, but it's got this sort of Sherlock Holmes themes, and it uses, you're going after, the idea is that you're sort of going after a villain, and it works on a kind of point system to kind of determine who has solved the mystery.
Yep.
It's an interesting one. You basically start off the game, everybody has, I think it's 6 cards. Mm-hmm. You're into that sort of first initial, like however many, is shuffled in like one villain, and the game is a foot card, which whoever has that has to play it first, and that starts the game. And then you just kind of go around the table. The idea is that it's almost like, I'm trying to think of the card game, you're trying to empty your hand, essentially, to win the game. And
that's difficult.
And that is really difficult. Something that we found... basically, you have different types of cards, so if you sort of look through here, you've got the ones the most common are movement and location. So you have there's train cards, handsome cards, and there's a thick fog, which I can't remember.
We only ever saw that once. I played it once,
and I think you can only play it in certain circumstances as well.
That applies to
pretty
all
much
the cards in the sense, because that's the way the game works. Is each card that you play, at the bottom of it has a little depiction of the types of cards that can be played subsequently. So color coded. Yeah. So, for example, if you play a travel card, which are the blue ones, the next card has to be a location. Yeah.
And it has to be a different type of location from the previous one. This was the problem with the game, I think. But we'll get to that.
You would start off in London, you start at Baker Street, and you can take a train to the country. Mm-hmm. But then you're in the country doing stuff, and that then allows you to do investigating. So there's information and action cards that let you do certain things there. But yeah, if you want to go back to London, or that's what you're trying to play, you need to play another train card, and then a London. The next person has to play a London location card, or they can't play anything.
This is where we get into the old school card game. This is I thought this game was even older than it is, because it's 1991. I thought it was older than that. I thought it was like 80s, possibly 70s, but I'm not really sure. And the thing is that if you can't play, you have to pick up a card.
Yeah.
If you can then play that card, you are allowed to play that card. Yeah. But we got to a point with this game where people just had massive hands of cards, because all that we could really do was just constantly play travel cards. But there are things you do, once you get to the locations, the general idea is that you're playing clue cards and investigation cards to then try and sort of, I don't know, it's almost like you're trying to weed out a villain. Yeah,
you want to determine who has a villain card
in their hand.
And at the beginning of the game, you know that one of the players definitely does have a villain card, because you shuffle one in at the beginning, and there are a number of others that are in the deck that will come out as you go through the deck. And because there's 2 ways to win. One is to get rid of all of your cards. But as you said, that's quite hard to do. But the other and more common way to win is ideally to determine a player who has a villain card, one or more villain cards in their hand, and then perform an arrest by playing the arrest card. So you can't just, you have to find it out or figure it out or guess, but then you actually have to have an arrest card and be able to play it.
Yeah.
Because there's only you can only play it in a location. You can't arrest people on the train. It's not allowed. Not allowed in this game.
And you have to. And there are as well, like whoever you're arresting can also, if they have an alibi card, they can play that to get out of the arrest. So you don't have to show them anything.
Unless you play the Sherlock Holmes card.
Well, yeah, the Sherlock Holmes card is obviously Sherlock Holmes
trumps
unbeatable.
all.
It trumps everything.
It's just one of those.
Yeah.
And it's a big deck as well, so there's no guarantee you'll see them in a hand.
Like the other kind of weird thing about it, and I guess it's deliberately weighted in a certain way so that it maintains a certain amount of its realism, is that the winner of the game is determined by points. So you have points assigned to like a value to different types of cards. So your movement and location are very low value. So if you've got a few in your hand, they're not going to cause you too much bother. But things like if you start having a higher value when you've got the information and action cards, which like you arrest people. The Holmes card is like 50 points. So if you're just sitting there with that in your hand, you're wasting. You are putting yourself in trouble. Basically, you might as well play it. You might as well find out.
Yeah, that's another old school aspect of that we've seen in so many other card games, where when the round ends, for whatever reason, everyone adds up the points values that are remaining in your hand, and then we note them down. And then there's some bonuses though on top of that. So if the game ends by a successful arrest, so you play the arrest card, you point to one of the other players, and they have to show you their hand in secret. And if there's one or more villains in there, then the arrest is successful, and that's the end of the round. So if you did a successful arrest, you get to subtract the points values of the villains that were in that hand from your score, and the person who was arrested, I think, has those points values added to their score as well. So there's a wee bit more to it than
it's not. It's like it's the thing. I mean, I don't think you can really have a situation where someone can arrest someone and then lose the game. It's the thing that's been worked out that it'd be tough, or the rounds, because you play multiple rounds and then add up your score at the end. You'd have to have a massive hand of cards. You'd have to be playing in the most ridiculous way possible.
But one of the things that's interesting is, like you say, because Holmes is worth a lot of points, but so is because there's other, like Watson's in the game, Moriarty's in the game, Mycroft's in the game. Moriarty is in the game, so there's like 4 villains, isn't there? And is there 4? What's the other?
They've got four villains and 3 special cards: Holmes, Watson, and Mycroft.
But they're all worth a lot of points, and that's an interesting thing, because you don't want the villains in your hand, but you kind of do want the heroes, or the detectives in your hand, if you will, because those are really powerful cards to have. But at the same time, if you've got them at the end of the game, then you're going to rack up so many points that it's going to lose. And you're supposed to play multiple rounds. That's another thing. Like, you're supposed to play, predetermined beforehand. Look, we're going to play 10 rounds of this game, and then we'll see who has the most points at the end of it, just adding everything up all the time.
It is a very quick to play.
It's very quick to play, yeah.
And we found ourselves playing several rounds of it. It was like, should we go for another?
We'll have another one, aye.
Yeah.
Because actually, I mean, it's an old school game. It's broken in the sense that the location thing and the travelling thing just drags that game out. We went round the table several times, just picking up cards, just so many times, and it's like, we can go to London, and then the next person goes, well, all I've got is a travel, so we're going back to the countryside. Anybody got a countryside card? Nah. Pick up cards. And it just, that sort of went on for ages, and you wouldn't find that in a modern game that would be popular, if you see what I mean. You just wouldn't get it anymore. And I think that if you could somehow fix that, if you could replace it with something else, or just simplify it a bit more, make it so that you don't have to go from London to the countryside, you can just go from London to London with it, just get rid of the train cards altogether, something like that, I don't know. Then I think that, yes, the game would be infinitely more playable, and it'd be more fun.
I'm starting to wonder whether they'd maybe made a mistake in, I mean, the idea being, you're going to pick up cards, but surely the thing to have done with the setup for the game is just start players with more cards. So they're just going to have more
Or
options from
possibly,
the
or
beginning.
actually just give them travel cards or location cards or something like that. But that's what I mean. It's just the game. It needs some sort of fix in order to be a much more playable game. I think.
I think it's just a bit old-fashioned.
It is.
I didn't honestly. It didn't bother me. I thought it was highly entertaining.
It was amusing, but then
You're not going to play this game every weekend.
No.
So
That's the thing. I think that, it could be. I could imagine it being annoying for like a casual player. Because we played a lot of games, it was kind of amusing to see that and for that to play out. Whereas if you're sort of a casual player, you can be like, what's going on with this game?
the joke would wear pretty thin after a while.
definitely.
I think.
but it was a wee bit of nostalgia for me anyway, because
I think so. There is definitely that. But otherwise, it's actually a pretty solid game, and I actually had some fun playing it. And there was the tension of, you've got these high value cards in your hand, and you want to get rid of them. You don't want to have these in your hand at the end of the game, so you are sort of trying to find ways, because the cards all have different powers basically that let you do various things that could maybe get rid of those cards, even if it's like swapping hands with somebody.
Yeah,
But
the swapping hands thing was quite funny. Quite a few
I
times.
think that's a main thing in the game, though, because basically, if you're swapping hands with somebody and you've got a villain in your hand, you're like, I'm arresting that person because I've given them that villain.
Yeah.
Like, if you can manage to get an arrest card from somewhere.
So you've got to hope that the person you swapped with has one.
Well, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it had a wee bit of a love letter type feel in that sense. It
definitely.
felt a little bit like a party game, what we now consider modern style light party games. I mean, you could definitely play it that way, because it's not difficult. It's not difficult to pick up. You can play with lots of players. There's no stated limit. How do we look? And there is a huge number of cards in this box. I suspect there is a practical limit, which you don't be waiting too long for your turn to come round just to say that I can't play and pick up another card.
Yeah.
But it's flexible in that sense. And like we dealt someone in after we'd been playing for a few rounds.
It is,
Yeah, and I mean,
Just gave them a score, you have this many points, that's an average.
it was fine.
Yep. It's not a game you're going to take seriously. The rules seem to assume that you're going to take it seriously, but...
The whole tone of the game is a very kind of
the tone of those rules. It's like, this is serious stuff.
old school Sherlock.
Yeah,
None of your quippy modern Sherlock.
No.
but actually, I mean, it was a fun present, Euan. Thank you very much.
Oh, no bother.
So I will give this a thumbs up. It's not something you're going to like you say. It's not something you're going to play all the time, but it does have a nostalgia value.
It's possibly like a palate cleanser between heavier games.
Yeah,
Play with
definitely.
your gran,
Or you're
eh?
waiting for somebody to turn up or something like that. Yeah, it's perfect for that.
We used to play games like this with my gran when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And she would definitely have approved of this game.
I can see it definitely being a grandparent game. The kind of game that your grandparents would be like, get that game out, we're going to sit and play it for 4 hours.
Got to keep the kids entertained.
That's it. I'll tell you some tactics, son. You watch me.
My granddad never had. My granddad just had dominoes.
Well,
Can we do a review of Domino's one day?
Oh yeah, let's review tongue-in-cheek review of Domino's. Episode 100, Euan.
Oh yes. Well, looking forward to it.
Okay, right. Let's move on for that then. That Sherlock Holmes the card game came out in 1990. Did I say 3 or 1? It was 1. 1991 it came out. Designed by Roger Hayworth. Okay, right. We're going to give a quick Gloomhaven update because we hadn't played Gloomhaven in a while.
We were out of the game.
We were out of the game. One of our gaming partners. I mean, he had a son last year, but I think it's kind of started to eat up his life a little bit, and we were, all busy. We couldn't really get a night together. So we've managed to start playing a game. We've had a couple of sessions.
He's over that now.
I think he's over that now.
He's done with it.
The
The novelty's worn off.
The novelty's worn off. Having a child. So he's back playing board games with us. Now, this is the first time we'd played it since I got the sort of updated versions of stuff from the second Kickstarter, the second Gloomhaven Kickstarter, where they sort of tweaked and fixed things. including one of the main things is that they've given you dials to keep track of your health and experience, which is so much better than the fiddly. I could see what he was trying to do with the little counters. It wasn't exactly what he wanted to do originally, I believe.
No.
When I did the first Kickstarter and getting the updates through, I'm pretty sure he wanted to do something a bit different from that, and it didn't really work. So he did this other thing, and that's not worked either. The dials make a massive difference. You're not sending these tiny little tokens flying across the board anymore, not remembering where they were supposed to be. Definitely makes a huge difference. We've been attempting to play through the same dungeon the past couple of times. It was failing so bad.
How many times have we failed that now? Just twice?
Twice, but I somehow think that this is just going to be the thorn in our side, this.
Yeah.
It almost feels like your characters are not set up for this quest.
Well, I don't know. It's never felt. It's like everything we've played in Gloomhaven. It's felt like a bit of a scrap.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite like our character. I think there's certain things we worked quite well. Although we did discover that there was a tactic that you and I were using together that doesn't actually work.
We just had to change dramatically how I use my deck.
Yeah.
But because it was actually what it was that we didn't realise that one of the symbols meant that you could not take that card back from your dead cards, basically, because one of the cards you've got lets another player take a card back from their dead cards, but only some cards, because some cards have a symbol on them that say that you can't do that under any circumstances. So we were kind of cheating a little bit, but it's fine because it means I've had to completely rejig my deck so that I'm not using lots of these cards that are just going to go out. And I actually think it's improved my game a bit, because it means that I'm actually reusing most of my cards rather than just going like, all out attack, blast everything, oh god, I'm out. That's me, I'm knackered.
Yeah, I'm still finding it a bit difficult to get out of that rut with my character. I feel like I was a lot more cautious in the early games. Yeah. I mean, I do have, because my character's 12 cards, there's a bit more to play with there, and I do have a few more that you aren't going to lose straight away. But a lot of his kind of focus as a character is on these kind of like big moments, kind of like
he's a tinkerer, right?
Yeah, he's a tinkerer. He has crazy weapons and things like that. So it's about using these weapons to the best effect you can. And sometimes, basically, if I just go if I see the opportunity, I need to use them, because if I don't, it's not going to come up again, probably.
Yeah.
But it's finding, it's difficult to make that gel with what everybody else is doing.
I think that's been the problem, though. I think like in this quest, we were having the problem, which I think is it's probably one of my complaints about Gloomhaven, is that you do end up with that like an area of the board which is just a funnel, and it's a complete roadblock. And that's been the problem with this quest for us, is the fact that we open a door, and as soon as we do, that character ends their movement, and then all the monsters just pile through this door and come straight for us, and we can't move, and it becomes a massive issue, I think. And in this quest in particular, I think that has been our problem, is that we cannot get through some of these doors because the monsters are just totally jamming it full.
Aye, well, with the particular quest that we're doing, there's an escort mission basically that we're doing, and so that kind of puts a bit of constraint on us, because we need to clear a path because this NPC they put in is going to just move regardless of whatever you do. So if there's a space, they're going to move into it, and if that means putting them right in the path of monsters, doesn't matter, that's going to happen anyway. And the other thing as well, you kind of want to keep them moving, because as with the whole card thing, you've only got a limited time to get them to where they need to go. So I think it might just be this mission.
I think it's this mission. Yeah.
It's got a lot going on, and it's.
I do wonder. I mean, I wouldn't mind some opinions on this, actually, if anybody's listening and they've played Gloomhaven. I know there's at least one person that listens that's played Gloomhaven, because I've had several chats with them on Twitter. And we have the mixture of the Tinkerer, we've got the Spell Weaver, we have Dave's
Cragheart.
The Cragheart, yes, and the I can't remember what James's character is. The
Scoundrel.
The Scoundrel, that's what it's called.
We've
got that mixture, and I don't know, I almost feel like that we just have problems with this team just working together.
Yeah, it's a strange one, because I mean, it's not like, you've got 6 starting characters to choose from, so there shouldn't be, there should be a bit, you should really be able to combine them roughly in any way.
I think your problem seems to be though, like, and I know I'm using like sort of video gamey terms here, but like Dave's character looks like a tank and has a lot of health, but doesn't really act like a tank. And I don't know if that's Dave, but
not the way I play him.
Not the way you play him, but almost. Because I'm almost like, Dave, get in there and just like protect us all. But then as soon as you do that, you're almost dead.
I'm like, no, I'm going to stand at the back of the room and throw rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
The enemies do.
And the other thing is that we don't have like a sort of crowd control person at all. It just seems that we've gone for a lot of just try and blast things.
I mean, I've got a good bit of like area, like a couple of like area damage cards, but they don't always do what you need. Like I've a bit of immobilise and things as well, but then also things like, you know, with clarifications on how the monsters move, that's kind of changed how things happen as well. And some of the stuff we're coming up against in this one are like those, like you've got the living spirits for a start, which we encountered on a previous mission. I remember them they are really difficult because they've got they're very hard to hit.
Aye.
Because you can get your hit off them, but you need to have a high damage because they've got a high shield. And they do horrendous things to you.
They hit hard,
and
they hit from far away,
and
they also they can do really annoying, like curses and stuff like that, and it just makes, the longer you let them live and the longer you let them hit you. See, I don't think they hit that hard actually, but it's just the longer you let them live and the longer you let them hit you, the worse it gets for you, because they are like cursing you to hell.
Yeah.
And curses are very bad things to have in your deck. And, you know, this quest that we're doing in particular, the very start of it, like, in fact, well, you guys aren't affected by it because you've got these abilities now. But I get 3 curses in my deck, and it just, like, it really knackers me. Like, and I can't take any more curses in that as the game goes on. It's just, it just means I'm missing so many times.
It has been, I mean, one of the things I say about Gloomhaven, I love the game, but it has been a frequent complaint that we've come up against, even the ones where we've done okay, is that it does feel a bit crowded. Like you say about this whole bottleneck thing, all of the maps feel a little bit too constrained.
It just feels like the same thing happens every time. It feels like every time you open a door, you just end up in a situation where there's like 6 monsters all trying to cram into the doorway.
Yeah.
And it just it feels off for me. Like, that whole thing feels off. I almost feel like they shouldn't really move unless you're actually in the same room as them. Probably that's a rule we've missed.
Possibly.
But coming to that, I mean, like, there's a lot of rules that we've realised that, like, we were doing a wee bit wrong. In particular, one of the things, like, the summons, and you bring a mechanical robot thing with you, move before you rather than after, which is what we were doing. But that was always a rule, it's just that we missed that. And actually, I put a tweet up the other day there saying that we have like a Gloomhaven video that I spent a long time editing, and I was like, I don't think this video gets enough love. And then when I sat and watched it back again, and I was like, God, we were playing this game so badly back then. Like, we got so many rules wrong. Like, that's no wonder people don't watch this video. We're not doing it right.
It's not a good reference.
Like, well, we fixed all that. I mean, like, a lot of games, you know, like, we play a lot of board games, and sometimes it's very hard to remember, because a lot of these games are quite similar, dungeon crawlers, you know, area control games, whatever, and sometimes you do forget which rules apply to which games. But I feel like we've played Gloomhaven enough and we've fixed enough rules, and Dave's probably sitting there thinking, nah, we're still doing it wrong. But I think we are probably.
I think we're pretty
right.
close now.
We're pretty close to getting it 100% right now, I think. But there are still some weird situations turn up. And yeah, the monster movement clarifications one was a strange thing about. And I think, again, that's always been a rule. It's just something that we never really considered, which was that, you know, monsters might not go for the closest person, even if there's a path to get to them. So yes, Gloomhaven is we're still ticking away. Nobody's we've not retired a character yet. We're not even anywhere close to that stage, I don't think.
No, I'm not.
I'm not.
No.
And
not going to get any closer if we don't beat this blooming.
Yeah, if we don't beat this quest, we're not going to get anywhere with it. But
given that we came to it because we couldn't get past another quest, we really need to knuckle down on some of these.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm quite excited to like open up some of these new characters and stuff. Like, I really want to see them, and I'm getting a wee bit bored of the Spellweaver. It just feels like the same stuff I'm doing over and over again. Not bored, I don't know if that's the right term. It's just that I feel like that, you know, I feel like I'm ready to move on to a new character. I feel like I'm ready for a new mixture of stuff to deal with. Other things is that there are expansions coming out for Gloomhaven. I think there's a sort of smaller expansion coming out later this year, and I think there's a big expansion coming out next year, which is apparently going to be pretty much the same size as the main box. So we've got a lot more Gloomhaven coming, boys. So we need to catch up. Okay, right. I think we're definitely have to wrap up now. We will give out all our internets and stuff. So we've got exciting news. We are now on Stitcher. If you want to find us there, I'm sure you'll be able to do that. You know what we're called. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes. You can find us on YouTube. We have a PSN community. We have a Discord, which is discord.me/firstplayertoken. That's FIRST. So everything's First Player Token as an FIRST. If you want to find us on Twitter, it's @1STPlayerToken.
That'll be once player token.
Thank you very much. I don't think I gave out the email address there. It's firstplayertoken@gmail.com. My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris, which I'm just randomly playing bits of Battle Royale at the moment. And we are part of the Podnose Network,
the UK's leading entertainment podcast network.
Any news this week, you?
Still just ticking along as usual. Nothing additional to report. Just check it out. All the various podcasts on there, covering a wide array of topics, generally pop culture related and whatnot. But there's also other stuff there.
There's some weird stuff.
There's some very weird stuff.
Some very strange stuff. But it's all very amusing.
Yeah. Good times.
So that's podnose.com if you want to go and check that out. We will hopefully be back next week with a video games episode. I'm sure Pawel's off gallivanting in the Highlands or something, isn't he? But I think he might be back for that, so we'll have to shut down another Battletech review next week. But until then, thanks for listening.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.